Hello, and welcome to the Mama Jack podcast. This is a podcast where you're going to hear the realness about parenting, the rawness about parenting. I don't sugarcoat anything. And today, our topic is baby blues and postpartum depression. I wanted to start this episode off with a quote that I got from a mother. I had terrible, terrible postpartum depression. I hated nights and I hated when my husband would leave for work in the morning. I cried all day, every day, and I felt like I was in a daze and outside of my body. I also couldn't sit at home, so every day of my maternity leave, I had to be somewhere with people, which was good for me. It was awful, and I was upset that more people didn't talk about it. I had no idea, and I for sure didn't think it would happen to me. I got through it with help from my family and friends and medication. I'm still on it, and it's helped me tremendously. Postpartum is real, and more people need to talk about it. So, postpartum depression has been more popular to talk about, but for a long time, a lot of women kept it inside. I wanted to read a couple statistics about baby blues and postpartum depression before I tell you my story of my postpartum depression. Okay, so baby blues. 50% to 85% of moms get this. Okay, that's a lot. That's a lot. It normally doesn't last longer than a couple weeks. It goes away by itself within a couple weeks of birth. There are emotional highs and lows. You can be restless or anxious, impatient or grumpy, crying for no reason, feeling like I'm not myself anymore, hard to concentrate, mood changes, and sadness. Okay, now for the postpartum depression. There are more than 3 million cases diagnosed every year. Can you believe that? 3 million cases. It's a lot more common than people think. Some of the symptoms could be a loss of pleasure or interest in things you used to enjoy, eating more or less than you usually do, anxiety all of the time or panic attacks, racing scary thoughts, feeling guilty or worthless and blaming yourself, irritability, anger, agitation or mood swings, sadness, crying uncontrollably for very long periods of time, the fear of not being a good mother, the fear of being left alone with the baby, misery, inability to sleep, sleeping too much, difficulty falling or staying asleep, disinterest in the baby, family, and friends, difficulty concentrating, remembering details, or making decisions, and thoughts of hurting yourself or the baby. Causes of postpartum depression can be a change in hormone levels after childbirth, previous experience of depression or anxiety, family history of mental illness or depression, stress involved in caring for a newborn and managing new life changes, having a challenging baby who cries more than usual, is hard to comfort, or whose sleep and hunger needs are irregular and hard to predict, having a baby with special needs, premature birth, medical complications, or illness, first time motherhood, very young motherhood, or older motherhood, other emotional stressors such as death of a loved one or family problems, and financial or employment problems. Isolation and lack of social support as well. How common is postpartum depression, you ask? Up to 1 in 7 women experience it. For half of the women diagnosed with postpartum depression, this is their first episode of depression. So you could have never had depression and anxiety in your life, and boom, you're hit with it. About half of women who are later diagnosed with postpartum depression may have begun experiencing symptoms during pregnancy. So I think if you're listening to this as a mother who has experienced postpartum depression, or as somebody's partner who their partner experienced postpartum depression, we can all agree people don't like to talk about it. I mean, who wants to talk about depression? You kind of wish it away. For me, I was like, okay, it's hormones, it'll level out. Okay, it's hormones, it'll level out. I was constantly talking myself out of it. It was like I didn't want to just come to terms with the fact that it was happening to me. Same with my baby blues. I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah," like I didn't want anybody to be around my son. I cried and cried and cried for no reason. And I have to tell you, my pregnancy was kind of hard. I say kind of because, you know, I didn't have really many complications. I was put on bed rest pretty early, but my husband traveled for work. So I was by myself a lot. I lived in LA at the time and I didn't have family around. My friends were all pretty busy. I had little support from people, but not as much as I felt like I needed. Um, so pregnancy was a little tough for me too. Um, as far as giving birth to my son, that's my first. I'm going to talk about my son's postpartum depression first. Well, the postpartum depression I had with my son. The birth was fine. It went well. He was taken to the NICU for a couple days because of his breathing. He was gurgling a little bit, which means fluid in your lungs. And so he had to be in the NICU. So I was planning on trying to breastfeed. And then I was like, okay, I'll pump. But the first 2 months of his life, I was waking up with him, trying to breastfeed him for about 20 minutes. He would refuse, he would get angry. So I would give him pumped milk and then I would pump after that, and then I'd go to bed. Now, at the beginning, after you just have a baby, this is every 2 to 3 hours. So I would get about an hour of sleep at a time. It was nuts. So lack of sleep was crazy for me. As far as baby blues, I definitely had baby blues. I mean, I didn't want anybody to touch him. I was scared all the time. I remember somebody came to visit and they had a little cold, and I was angry, like angry. Um, there was a birthday party shortly after, and I didn't want anybody really holding him. And when they would, I would have like almost a panic attack. So the baby blues part of it, I thought would go away. But it did not. It just kept on going. So, yes, I said I didn't want people to touch him. I was feeling this is going more into my postpartum depression. I was feeling resentful towards him. And it's awful to say that as a mother. We never want to say we're resentful for our kids. We love our kids, right? Like, I do anything for my kids. But I was feeling very much so like, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. Nobody told me how hard this actually was going to be. I feel like I have no help. Um, all the things. Okay. And, I missed my life before him. I mean, all this while you're holding this little being that you just care so much about. So the guilt that I felt at the same time was unreal. Like, I just kept beating myself up for it. I ended up feeling resentful towards family and friends because I felt like they weren't helping enough. Like I said, I did live far from my family and they did come to help. But to me, in my head, it wasn't enough and I needed more. A lot of times when family comes to visit after having a baby, they want to hold the baby. They want to do this, they want to do that. And I truly feel like when friends and family come to visit, it should be about the mother. Like, yes, hold the baby for a couple minutes, but then, mom, what do you need? Do you need me to hold the baby so you can shower and have some you time? Do you need me to make you food? Do you need me to watch the baby so you can take a nap? It's those things that are the most important. Um, I wasn't able to control my emotions. It was like a roller coaster. I would be happy and then rage and then sadness and then depression. It was seriously everything. And then there'd be bouts of happiness and energy. It was kind of just insane to think about. Another thing that happened to me is I would have blackouts, not as in passing out, but I would be standing there doing the dishes. All of a sudden, everything would go black. That happened all the time, a lot. A lot. I don't know if that is lack of sleep. I don't know if that's part of postpartum depression. I do know that can be a symptom of anxiety. So I'm sure it was a little bit of both. Um, I felt like nothing could help me. I was in therapy. I wasn't feeling helped by the therapy. I tried everything. I tried working out, my usual stuff, because I had depression and anxiety before having children. Okay. I was able to go off of I was on medication. I was able to go off of my medication and work out then and eat healthy, and I felt fine. So I thought doing those things would help, right? Well, it didn't. Nothing was helping me. Nothing. People were being so nice to me. Any help I got, my husband was being so sweet. He just couldn't understand the way I felt. And I was so upset with him because of that. But I, like, how do you just can't explain those emotions sometimes. I contemplated if my son and my husband's life would be better without me because I just couldn't pull myself out of this funk. I could not pull myself out of this funk. And I'm talking, I had this for until my daughter was born. So, 2 years I went through this. I felt like a stranger in my own body. I mean, after pregnancy, your body changes a lot, a lot, a lot, a lot. Like in ways that'll have to be a whole other episode for me to talk about. But your body changes a lot, even like the function of stuff. And that's what bothered me the most, I think. Actually, when I stopped pumping after I had him, I went completely lactose intolerant out of nowhere. It was the weirdest thing ever. And now I'm fine with it, which is even stranger. I hope, well, fingers crossed, it stays that way. But, that was just some weird thing that happened to me. I refused meds because, like I said, I wanted to work out. I wanted to meditate. I wanted to do everything in my power to be better without meds. When I was on meds before, the reason I went off is because I started to feel like a zombie and I didn't want to feel like that. Um, I truly believe that my postpartum depression, of course, it's always based around hormones, right? But and I actually believe that my anxiety and depression before having kids was all based around hormones. I was on birth control, went off of birth control, and then I went off of my medication before having kids. And um, that's when I could control my anxiety and depression. So that to me points to hormonal changes, right? I had no sex drive. TMI, I'm a Scorpio, okay? Like we are sexual beings. It was like a light switch just shut it off. Like just over, off, nothing. And I even imagined like is it my husband? Like other men, women? Nothing. Literally nothing. Like a light switch turned it off. Um, I started drinking a lot to escape, what was happening in my head. I just wanted to feel different. It didn't make me even feel better, but I just felt different and more relaxed, I guess, when I did it. Um, Luckily, I was an overproducer, so I was able to drink and pump for my child. Not a lot of mothers have that, but um, the drinking obviously is not great for you, though, especially when you're using it as a coping mechanism. I had panic attacks. I had trouble sleeping. Like the insomnia was crazy. I just would wake up in the middle of the night, wide awake, not able to go back to sleep. I did find the Calm app, and that helped me a little, but still, once you're awake, it's like you're awake. It's just, you know what I mean. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you know what I mean. Um, I had dissociation. Um, Felt like I was outside of my own body. Like I was outside looking in. It's weird to kind of describe if you've never gone through it, but it feels like you're not yourself. Um, like almost like, what am I doing here? Why am I, you know, am I really like, is this really my life? It's like weird, almost like the feeling that like when people say like they've died and come back and they saw themselves like above, it's almost that feeling, but not physically seeing yourself. It's like mentally, my brain was like detaching from my body. Like it was like I was somebody else. It was crazy. And COVID lockdown, yay! That happened when my son was about 7 months old. Um so there were no mommy and me's. There was not a lot of support because there couldn't be support. My husband was home, but it was just us three. Even taking walks seemed scary. Everything was so scary at the beginning of that. So that of course added to it a lot. Um I had feelings like I didn't want to be a mom. Again, like I said at the beginning of this, that is just the most horrible feeling because you love your child so much. Like, if you're not a parent, you can't understand the love that you have for your children. It is the deepest thing in the world. I would do anything for my children, okay? But I just was asking myself, did I make the wrong choice? Like, was I really supposed to do that? I'm not strong enough for this, evidently. Like, I can't do this. Like, it seems so easy for everybody else. Why is it so hard for me? Um, I wished I had waited, but it's like I was 32 or 33 when I had my son. Like, I did wait, but I was like, maybe I wasn't ready mentally for this. Maybe, I should have waited a little longer. Um, my experience with postpartum depression, like I said, lasted up until my daughter was born. And that was right after my son turned 2 years old. So that means my pregnancy with her was horrible as well. Granted, we were moving across the country. My husband was away. He was working in LA. My mom got sick. So I decided to move in with her to take her to treatments. So I was pregnant in their house. We lived there for 6 months. We decided to have the baby there, but it was so much anxiety and it was beyond normal pregnancy hormones. It was rage. My poor toddler, I had no patience at all. When I say no patience at all, I mean no patience at all. So, this was my first child, and that was my first experience with the postpartum depression. My next episode, I will talk about the postpartum depression with my second child because it was completely different and very much the same in ways that I didn't realize. But before I end this episode, I just wanted to read to you a Facebook post that I wrote when my child, my firstborn, was a little over a year old. And this was still postpartum depression, guys. So, with the end of this episode, I will read to you that post. Very public on Facebook. Obviously, a cry for help, and still felt like nobody could help me as much as I needed. After having a child, I seriously feel like my soul was sucked out of my old body, stored in a new body, and it's hidden behind a pit of new obstacles that I have to overcome at least once a week, whether it be physical or mental. I am different, and no one prepares you for how much you will change. People that don't know will never understand the struggle of trying to be a human again after having a child and becoming a mother. Do not expect me to ever be the same. Do not expect me to put up with any bullshit because I have enough of that going on and I can't control it. Do not expect me to show up if you are not showing up or have let me down repeatedly in the past. I am still healing a fucking year later. Who the hell am I? Where is all the support I thought I'd have? Why is this the hardest yet most beautiful thing I've ever done in my life? Why does my body have to be tortured to feel the most exquisite love I've ever felt in my life? So now you've heard two quotes, one from me, one from a friend. You can see the pain that we were going through, okay? I just want to let mothers know, partners know of mothers that are going through this or think they may be going through this. You are not alone, okay? You are not alone. Um, Please feel free to contact me if you need to talk. Keep listening because my next journey was completely different. And if you did not relate to this one, you may relate to the next one. But I just want you to know that I feel you and I hear you, and you are not alone with this postpartum depression or baby blues. And it is hard. It is really hard to deal with. And I would love to be that support for you. You can email me. You can check out my pod on the Peanut app. It's called Good Morning Mamas. I try to do it every morning. And I would love to talk to you. I would love to be your support. And with that, everybody, I will say goodbye. You can subscribe to my podcast. That would be amazing. And my next episode will be part 2 of postpartum depression. Thank you for listening.